Three Gold and Black Live. Kyle Charters, Stacy Clarity joined me, and we also want to quickly thank our sponsors, Basham Reynolds, and right behind Kyle's head there. You can move right there. Do it as we talk. There, Triple X. You got that, Triple X, and then Hilton Garden Inn. This is a really, like I said, this is we give it to you in any way that we can here, and also to our sponsors. We thank you very much. All right, we're going to turn our minds, our discussion to football here, and obviously Stacy and Kyle have spent a lot of time during this season and continue to covering Purdue football, among other things. But Stacy, some other things that have gone on here since the close of the season. You talked to Morgan Burke a while back about lights, which is always a conversation starter usually with this group.
He brought it up himself.
Yeah, and he brought it up himself, which surprised you a little bit. But tell us a little bit about at least what your impressions were. People know, some know what he said, but talk about that.
I think it's funny that you're like, he talked about lights, which was so not the point of that whole reason we talked to him.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what a lot of people came out of it. That was the thing they were talking about, which is either sad or nice that people care, depending on how
national champion.
Yeah, depending on how you look at it. The gist of that part was obviously the big news was that the Notre Dame series was taking a break, which obviously we can discuss too, because I'm sure there are some people who feel pretty strongly about that. But in terms of the light issue, he said at the recent Big Ten, I don't know how recent they are now talking about it, but relatively recent Big Ten athletics directors meetings, there was kind of talk that it was pretty clear that in the next TV negotiations, which I don't know if I wrote that down, I think it's 17, so that they're pretty sure there's going to be a lot of pressure to have more primetime games in terms of the Big Ten. And obviously primetime means dark, and dark means you need light. So he said he's going to look into those options. Obviously right now they use Musco and they just bring those in, and the networks pay for that, which is what Morgan has said for a long time, is like, hey, if you give me money, I'll put in permanent lighting. But right now it's free because the networks pay for it. So, but I think he understands that it's an important thing to look at now because of what's coming. I think generally he's tried to have his eye on the future, and the last major renovation at Ross-Ade was 2003, and he thinks that you don't want to get too far behind those renovations. That was something that he thought had happened, and then you're kind of trying to catch up, and you have tons of work to do. You can't get it all done. So that maybe that with the South End Zone project right now, this is just the logical time to consider this, and I think he will. I mean, he says he hears it obviously sometime about how people really want them, but he doesn't think that he doesn't get it too badly, I guess. But certainly we see it all the time on the message boards how much at least a small portion of fans want that and think that it's and that's obviously a lot of the times it can be a smaller group, but they tend to be more vocal maybe than the majority.
If I had to prioritize that stuff, it would be South End Zone,
which
sound
you mean
I mean like just the
look of it,
the look of the South End Zone. The sound system, which is not very good. A new video board, which is just becoming old because I think that's, about 15? Where did they put that in?
No, but they redid it. Well, they put it in originally in '97, but then they updated it in 2004, I want to say. I could be wrong on that. I probably am.
And then probably the lights in there, too. So,
and that's basically his list also,
Really?
There you go.
Yeah.
No, I mean,
I think all those things can be done in relatively together, I think, over the next 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting that you talk about, the 2003 renovation, which started after the 2001 season. So, that's 11 years, and that's what's hard to kind of come to grips with. With those things are incremental, and yes, you spend a lot of money to get that done. They're still paying that off. They've got to continue to sell suites to be able to do all those kinds of things. So those are all play into this. Another happening, and we can debate, I suppose, a little bit the importance of or the fact that Notre Dame is no longer going to be on the schedule after next year on a year-to-year basis, and that's certainly going to be a big change for Purdue.
I just thought it was hilarious that everybody's immediate reaction to that was that everyone at Purdue needed to be fired for not making this continue to happen. It's like when you're in high school and you ask the hot girl in class out and she denies you. I mean,
that happened to me all the time.
Yeah, it's not the guy's fault, right? I mean, he tried.
Yeah.
And Notre Dame didn't want to dance, and so they weren't going to do it. And Purdue probably tried because I think it was important that Purdue keep it going as much as they possibly could, and ideally every year. But Notre Dame wasn't going to do it.
Notre Dame wasn't going to do it under the conditions that they had to deal with. I mean, they had to have they have had provisions or parameters put on them in terms of how many games they had to play, and they had limitations, and I think that's a big part of it.
One thing I think that's important to note about that I'm not entirely sure we reported anywhere, which would, I say we when I mean me in that instance, was Morgan was asked about, did it hurt you to not be flexible off of this 7-game home whatever season, or you know what I'm trying to say, having
Slate.
7
Right,
games,
having 7 games at home.
every year. And he said there was a rumor that if we would have went to 6 home games, we could have kept it going, it being the Notre Dame series. And he said that was never a factor because it wouldn't have made a difference, and that they couldn't even get to that point. So
That tells you what the deal
right,
is.
and I think that I genuinely think, especially on Purdue's end, they tried to make this work, like you said, and it just didn't work out. And so next season, it's going to be at Lucas Oil Stadium, which is kind of cool. And then 2020 is the next game after that, which is 6 years, but 5 games of a break.
Right.
We finally figured that out. It took us like 3
Right,
days.
I'm still going to argue that we were
6
right,
years.
but that's
It's
neither
true.
here nor there. No, and I think you know, from a historical standpoint, this is a big deal for Purdue, only because, again, not necessarily knocking Purdue, but certainly the ability to evolve as a program back in the earlier days, long before these guys were born, but in the 50s and 60s, came from beating Notre Dame. And I think that ability, that's obviously very different now. And I think but it was nice. I look at it as much as the fact that you had close to a sellout in your facility every other year. You look at everything. We went to Darrell Hazel's last luncheon, I think it was in December, and they showed a kind of a highlight video, kind of a recruiting video, and it was all Notre Dame, Purdue stuff, because you had a full stadium, you had Brett Musburger doing the call, you had all those kind of things that add up. So that's going to be a change. I mean, and it's
I
going
know
to have
they've
to
tried to spin, Virginia Tech and Missouri as big, big time,
They are.
opponents coming in, and they are, but
and arguably as good as Notre Dame in terms of how they.
But it's still not
performs.
the same
Yeah.
feel as Notre Dame. I don't know how else to describe it than
Yeah.
that, I guess. I mean, you grew up, if you're a Purdue fan, hating the Irish.
Yeah.
It's just a fact. And now you're going to go, 6 years,
5 games.
5 games,
5 games,
without it.
7 weeks.
It's not going to be the same. It's just not.
And I did ask Morgan directly, will not playing Notre Dame hurt you? And he said, I don't think our football program depends upon playing Notre Dame, which can be debatable, as we have debated it, I think. And then the second part of that answer is I don't think Notre Dame's football program depends upon playing Purdue, which I agree with. But
Well,
so,
Purdue's not going to shut down the program just because they're
Right.
not playing Notre Dame. So in some respects, he's correct. I mean, it doesn't completely rely upon playing Notre
No.
Dame.
Right.
I think for the reasons we've said, it's
Yeah,
a pretty
yeah.
critical game.
right.
And I think first things first right now with where the program is, they need to get things righted, and they'll have a chance next year on national TV on NBC against Notre Dame on a night game to be able to make a statement for at least one last time. That will be a challenge in its own right. But I do think that is going to be a thing that will be debated a lot. Okay, we've also been doing our entrance interviews with the 2014 recruiting class. I guess you'd call David Blau and Kirk Barron in that class, even though they're already on campus. But Stacey, you had a chance to talk to both those guys, your impressions there.
Yeah, it was actually the first time I'd spoken with both of them, so it was just kind of interesting. They seem similar in terms of their attitude, both really eager, but guys who I think are the kind of players, and I've only spoken with them at one time, but seem like the kind of guys that you want this program to be about. Barron especially, just as his expectations are pretty high, which I don't think is a bad thing at all. I mean, you obviously want to set that bar high to be able to try to get there and work for it. And I think he seems like a guy who's really going to come in and try hard and care about the game and want to win. And I think Blau's the same way. Obviously, when you look at the positions both of them play, Blau is a quarterback. Danny Etling would seem to be the quarterback of the future, so to speak. So it looks like he's going to redshirt, but he says, I'm not going to back down from anything. I'm going to fight to get it, and that's what you want, a competitor coming in. And Barron says he's wants to beat out Robert Kugler for the starting center spot and be an All-American in his freshman year. So, hey, Robert Kugler was only the team MVP. Yeah.
I was tired of when Purdue's had this quarterback carousel over the last few years of every guy going, I don't care whether I start or whether I come off. No.
Yeah.
You want to start.
Yeah.
That's why you play. You play to play, and you play to win. You want to start.
So at least from those two players that they're bringing in with this class, they seem like they're the right kind of character and kind of fit that Darrell Hazel really wants to get those guys who, you know, care about the game and want to learn and will learn and you know, study the game and things of that nature. So I think from that perspective, it's pretty good. Another guy we thought was maybe coming is not coming now, though.
Yeah, Tim Cason, I talked to just, an hour ago, I guess,
Yeah.
a couple hours ago, and, you know, he ran into a little bit of a numbers crunch with trying to come early. He actually had finished, to tell you a little bit about what he's like academically, finished a calculus class, an online class, in a couple of weeks to get his proper Purdue credits.
Requirements.
Yeah, credentials, and academic credentials.
Academic credentials in order, and you know, still wasn't able to squeeze in at Purdue. You know, there are some factors involved there that we're still checking into a little bit, but you know, that's too bad for him. He'll have an opportunity to hang out for a while.
Train.
Yeah, train, and he's planning on doing that with an uncle that lives down in Arizona. At least that's a possibility. So, you know, he'll have an opportunity to train a little bit before he comes in May.
And a reason for him for them wanting him to come early, obviously, is he's a position of need at cornerback.
Yeah.
And when you look at Blau, maybe not so much, but anytime a quarterback can come early, it's really important for them to be able to learn the system in advance like that. And obviously, Purdue's very short on offensive linemen too, so that should help Barron get a little bit more prepared as well.
Yeah, a freshman DB or two, it would seem,
Yeah.
will play in the fall. Maybe more.
All right, we're already a couple minutes over, but I wanted to, one last question. Both of you are NFL watchers. Kyle really does most of that for our site, but a big NFL weekend, which Purdue players get through this week. You got to think about who they're playing now. You got
Taylor
Seattle.
Short will win.
You got someone that's going to win in Seattle because you got Cliff Averill versus Drew Brees.
Averill will win. I always go with the home teams, I think.
I'm a Colts fan, so
and,
I'm not even going to act like I'm biased on that. I do not like
You
the
don't
Patriots.
have to be biased on that front.
So
And
I am not
Ninkovich will
picking
lose.
Ninkovich.
Ninkovich will lose
They'll lose the Colts.
to the Colts.
No, they won't. Not in Newton. I don't
Well,
even
opinions
care.
and then you bash us for
I
them.
don't even care.
I don't even know. Is that all of them?
Well, you got Denver and Sean Phillips,
Sean Phillips, yeah.
and against San Diego and Nick Hardwick. So, you
quite
know,
a few
it's
guys.
interesting, and I don't watch enough of the NFL to be dangerous. However, somebody said it was the biggest underdog that Drew Brees has ever been in a playoff game. Of course, I'm not a gambler, but if you listen to that type of stuff, that the line is about 8 or 9 points. I like New Orleans to make that game.
Well, and they
close.
got
3 or 4
smoked
of
the
the
last
3.
time they played them this year, too.
They got smoked, yeah.
Yeah.
Three of the 4 games are supposed to have some weird weather too. I love odd weather games.
Huh. And when Seattle's one of them, I don't know.
I guess
But
I would get. I think even Carolina it's supposed to be rainy and windy. I think.
Yeah.
I don't know that for sure.
I'll be down in that neck of the woods. I think on
Football
Sunday
is a
afternoon.
game played outdoors.
Yeah, we saw that last week, and
George
then,
Carlin.
there you
If you
go.
ever heard his little spiel on
I.
football versus baseball. It's pretty
That's
good.
I
right.
probably wouldn't
Baseball, they
listen
go
to
to the park. Right?
What's that?
Baseball, they go to the park.
Yes.
That's what he says.
Everybody runs home.
That's right. They
Run
all want to
home.
get home. All right. On that note, we're going to send you home. We're going to thank our sponsors, State Farm agent Trent Johnson, as well as Basham Reynolds, Triple X, and of course Hilton Garden Inn. We will look forward to joining you next week. I think Stacy and Kyle are looking forward to it as well. We also expect to have Seth Davis on from CBS SI, who will be talking. We're not a book promotion site or show, but he'll be talking about his new John Wooden book, which comes out, I believe, on Tuesday. I've read excerpts of it. It's excellent, very well done, and we'll look forward, at least to what I've read. And I think it'll be he will join us as our guest next week, and also we'll have, I'm sure, a variety of new topics to hit, and a big recruiting weekend, obviously, next week with the Boilermakers. All right, thanks to Kim and to Allie back in the back room, so to speak, and Gordon with WLFI. If you missed part of this show, shame on you, but we'll archive it and have it up on the site here not too long from now. And want to thank again our sponsors and say look forward to seeing you next week. The weather is beautiful in Lafayette. It's over 32 degrees for the first time in it seems like 6 months, so that's a good thing. And we'll look forward to talking to you next week on Gold and Black Live.